Let's say Klaviyo just went public versus you can get someone that knows AI really well, but they're like a middle performer. Who wins?
I'll take the top sales rep every single
So
day.
you'd rather teach them AI than the sales skills?
How ridiculous would it be for me to say otherwise? I have no AI experience coming to Pinecone. You know what I mean? And it is very teachable. Just like any technology is very teachable.
Picture this. You're CRO of a $4 billion revenue company. 2,000 sellers on your team. You've made it. And then one day you get a call from a recruiter to consider a sales leadership role at a company with 40 salespeople and 25 million in revenue. No way. But that's not how Lauren Nemeth thought. She was at Twilio and she got a call for Pinecone. Well, partially she missed the building stage, but she also understood the impact that AI was going to have, not just on tech, but on society. And that was so intriguing to her. Thank goodness she took that call and took the role, because it changes everything. The way we sell, the objections we get, the way we hire salespeople. And someone with decades of experience like her helped crack those riddles. My name is Mark Roberge, and this is The Science of Scaling. Hey, Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Mark. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much for making time. So, gosh, what an intriguing story. I think at this point, most people have probably heard of Pinecone, especially if you are in tech and software. Can you tell us a little about how you found them and they found you?
I had a really amazing recruiter, and he reached out to me and was like, hey, I know you're sitting pretty at Twilio right now. You've got a big role. You've got, 2,000 people reporting into you and $4.5 billion in revenue, et cetera. Would you want to do something much, much, much smaller? You can't do anything without someone talking about AI nowadays. And so that's like, clearly you want to skate to where the puck is going, right? And AI is where everything is going. That's where every, software company is also going to have to innovate or ultimately be disintermediated. And from there, it was more like doing something more infrastructure that was sticky and core and principled to like, how do you understand knowledge to actually power agents or Gen AI applications or reducing hallucinations for LLMs? There's so many different applications from there that made it kind of like a cornerstone to AI that was attractive to me.
And this wasn't your first infrastructure play. You've had, quite a few exits and, 2 IPOs under your belt, and but probably not to this depth and not this particular type of tech. So I'm curious,
For sure.
How did you come up to speed?
So one is spending a lot of time with customers. So our customers, at Pinecone, actually today, we have about 4,000 to 5,000 net new developers sign up for Pinecone every single week. And to be honest, most of them are, long-tail developers really trying to figure out what they actually want to build in AI today. But then you also have on the high end, really sophisticated, I would say classically enterprises or really ISVs. So like Notion's a great example of this. Notion has an assistant product that they basically put directly into their application today, and that's powered by Pinecone. To have a vector database at scale to process that many documents that are ever changing, et cetera, was really important to them. So just going in use case by use case, customer by customer, to seeing what are people building and what are they trying to achieve with what they're building on Pinecone. Are they trying to stand up a net new revenue line, right? Where like Notion can actually charge more money for their enterprise grade paid tier to actually use this service? Or is this something that makes search better so that they can improve the consumer experience? Is it efficiency play or productivity play like a lot of the agentic companies that we're powering today? So really just getting into those core use cases, what's working, what's not.
Hey folks, just Mark here. Yeah, the first thing she did was she went and talked to customers. She didn't go into the product, play around. What button does this do? What's the advanced feature? She went and talked to customers. And you'll even hear later on, as she's thinking about building her sales process, it was based on what the customers were saying. And this is a major flaw when startups move into sales process design. When a founder typically moves to, okay, we need to go sell now, which means we need a sales process, they think it's a sales deck. It's covered with like, this is what we built. These are the features and benefits. These are the problems that we solve. Do you want to buy it? It's what I call an inside out approach. We built this. Let's go tell the world. It defies every single piece of research about successful sales, which needs to be focused on the buyer. We need to transition to a buyer-focused sales process to help them buy, and outside in. It's not about what our features do. It's about how is the buyer viewing the world before they even know our product exists. And that's what she's done here. And that's what you can see on this slide is the difference between a pitch deck that's very inside out versus a methodology that's outside in and focus on what the buyer cares about. Let's get back to Lauren.
And then honestly spending a lot of time with our partners, understanding the competition, what they're building with them, sort of like how does the overall ecosystem evolve, where are we actually differentiated in their core. But it's a forever learning curve. And obviously with AI constantly evolving, this is definitely a job for the curious who want to be forever learners. I had a great boss who was the CEO of Nextdoor, who's actually now the CFO of OpenAI by the name of Sarah Fryer. Sarah taught me basically these principles around 3 Ps. So people, performance, and process. People is always the first thing that I look at, right? In terms of the team that we have in place today, what we're actually trying to achieve. Like, do you have actually the right people in each of the different seats? Are those people motivated? Do they understand the strategy of the company? The performance side is like really just the core guts and health of the business, right? Like, where are we making money? Where are we closing deals? What do we know about the net new developers that are coming in? What are the core use cases, particularly for a PLG focused business like Pinecone? How do you start to dissect that funnel step by step? And I think in that is honestly where you get most of the goods of where you want to go focus. And that's where sort of the process comes into place, where, you're not just building for what the business needs today, but if you, lift your head up 3 to 6 months from now of the company you want to go build, what are you going to have to put in place? And that comes everything from sales methodology to really defining your core ICP, who you're selling into today, making sure that your pricing and packaging is something that's actually going to give you a leg up.
What'd you find and what'd you have to change?
There's a lot of knowledge in terms of different stages of startup companies. I think when I walked into this role, there was a need to up-level those skills for sort of the next chapter. And so we did a lot of that, I would say principally in sort of sales and partnerships. The business had just grown to a point that we needed to be punching above our weight a little bit more there. So we did a lot of investment people-wise, I'd say, in those 2 areas in particular. I think the second piece is just pricing and packaging was never a core skill at Pinecone, to be honest.
Biggest question I get every day. How do you build the next unicorn? How do you build predictable, scalable revenue growth? Luckily, the folks at HubSpot have put together the Science of Scaling database. Real playbooks from companies that have gotten to the scale of like 40 billion in market cap. The playbooks cover key decisions like hiring, compensation, go-to-market strategy, ICP development, even stuff on AI in sales. All from the folks behind the fastest growing companies in tech. It's not fluffy. It's super tactical. You know my content, you know my brand. It's stuff that you're gonna pick up, download, and put to use within an hour. So head to the description, click on the link, and download your free copy to start scaling your business today.
Really looking at the number of products that Pinecone has now launched across security and compliance, or as you think about higher throughput needs, or as you think about eval APIs, et cetera. There's so many features that we kind of rolled out that we never repackaged. We gave a lot away for free in our free tier. Pricing and packaging has been a pretty big overhaul.
Hey folks, just Mark here. Pricing and packaging. Yeah, it's the one that I think like you can change it and wow, does it have fast results. I mean, you compare that to like sales methodology design, changing your sales hiring, maybe compensation plan can compete with it, but changing that pricing and packaging, that can create a huge alteration quarter to quarter. Often good, sometimes bad. And so I want to just kind of reiterate some of Lauren's points here with some general frameworks. The first framework that you see on this slide is a triangle that represent the 3 dimensions by which you want to think about your pricing. You want to look at it from these 3 lenses, right? So the first lens is from an ROI standpoint, which she's really talking about. You've got to look at it from that standpoint. So how is a customer going to measure the ROI from purchasing your product? Clearly, you have to be priced multiples lower than that. Usually like a CFO buying big stuff might want to see like a 12-month ROI on their purchase, right? So we've got to look at through that lens. The second lens is the substitute price. So if your product didn't exist, how much would it cost for them to solve the same problem another way? It could be a direct competitor, or it could be like putting together other tools to try to figure out a way to get to that same problem. So we have to look at it from that lens. And the third lens is our own unit economics. What do we have to sell this at to make our business profitable? And so like we talk a lot about LTV to CAC, lifetime value to cost of customer acquisition, or payback period. So how much is our CAC today? How much does it cost us to acquire a customer? And where do we need to price this thing to make that work? Those are three mutually exclusive lenses that we hope that analysis comes in the same price. Now, this next slide talks about the unique perspective of pricing and packaging in PLG. And she speaks to this. What's coming out in her discussion is like, she wants to minimize friction so you can get a taste, but we also have to monetize. And so you can see here, this first lens is like, it puts too much friction up front. It puts too much friction up front such that it interrupts their ability to really understand and feel the power of the tool. So we want to avoid that. And sometimes people do that. Okay. The second situation here is, fine. The end user actually experiences the value, but now we try to monetize the end user. And that's fine. That's very common. But it's a lot better if we can let the end user get a lot of value from the product. And she's gone on to comment on how the optimal low friction pricing model is when we let the end user go hog wild and get tremendous value, and we monetize the enterprise. We monetize the business. Maybe IT needs to lock it down. Maybe CFOs need to control volume pricing. Whatever it is, we let the end user really experience the tool and we monetize the enterprise. And so that's just a way, if you're thinking about like a self-serve or PLG model, this is a dimension you can think through as you're trying to figure out your price. Let's get back to Lauren.
I think the third piece is the ICP. It's easy for a lot of companies to just want to sell into everybody, and AI is everywhere and everybody needs a database. So you should have a sales team running in 50 different directions. I think inherently that is flawed. And I'd say what we saw, particularly as I did a lot of evaluation with our existing customers today, but also just talked to, for example, our partners like Anthropic, like who are you guys selling into? Where are you seeing the biggest AI workloads? You'll see sort of a consolidation of interest really around ISVs or software companies today. Like that is where there is meaningful AI workloads taking place. And for a vector database that prides itself on scale and high throughput and data freshness, us focusing on those major workloads is really where we reoriented our team and our business. So
all right, 2 follow-ups in there. I love it. Point number 2, pricing and packaging, especially with PLG. Usually there's tremendous resistance from the founder, product and engineering to charge for much. Because they want, like you said, that opening development. It's like, hey, if we start charging, then someone else is going to copy us. And what was the dialogue internally? And as the person with the revenue number on your head, how did you navigate that?
First, it's go sit and talk to a ton of developers today. What would you pay more for or less for? And I think the obvious piece is for a lot of enterprise grade companies, they want the security and the compliance. They want the ability to audit. They want lots of professional services and so on and so forth. And so that's where we started to just get a lot of intake from customers around what they valued, what they would be willing to pay for. But then also, it's not like we're the only database company on the planet. There's lots of other database companies who have, transparent pricing that you can also look at and sort of figure out how do you take from the best of all worlds.
Were you also trying to monetize other levels? Like maybe something wasn't as important to the developer, but it was important to the executive team or the IT team or something. Can you speak through that?
Basically, when you come into Pinecone today, we want to make sure that you have a free experience where you can get a modest workload off the ground, but you want to at least understand how does Pinecone work. I think from there, we have different tiers depending on what you're ultimately looking to build, right? So if you are Morgan Stanley, you're going to have a higher degree of needs from a security and compliance perspective, from a services perspective. And what we did is we built kind of like, think of like gold, silver, bronze type packaging in terms of what different types of customers might be willing to pay.
And on your last point with the ICP, What selection criteria did you use to figure out this is our segment? Because I think, like you said, for example, ISVs was a really good performer. Like, what lens are you looking at to figure that out?
I mean, the obvious lens is always who are your biggest customers today and what are they doing and who's having like real success on the platform. It ended up being a lot of those were ISVs. There's also a lot of enterprises in there as well, but it's mainly ISVs. I think the second piece is you look at sort of your partners or even the competitive lens of, hey, where are you guys seeing meaningfully large workloads today? Like, where are you seeing real scale challenges? Once again, you have to go back to like, what is my product the best in the world at doing? And I think then you go for like a step further into like, what is the workload? So we see right now, RAG is probably the biggest workload that's coming into Pinecone today. RAG is like very like the talk of the town, what everybody wants to invest in. But if you think about it, a lot of it is a very simple chat over text type application. And that's all fine and well. But I think what we then found from there is that, those weren't actually creating ROI for those ISVs.
Hey, folks, just Mark here. Listen to how she's describing this. This is how we chose our ICP. Like, so many people say where our lowest CAC are, where our most leads are, where our highest conversion rate is. She didn't say that once. She said where people are seeing the most success. She's saying where people could generate the biggest ROI. It's the end game. It's the value creation. It's the lifetime value. It's not where the lead flow is. It's not where the highest close rates are. That's the definition of product market fit, and where we want to focus our ICP is where are we having success in generating remarkable value for our customer. And you can see here's just a simple analysis of a two-dimensional chart on the customer size and the customer industry. And you can see that like we're analyzing this through where is their high LTV and where is their high customer value. Those are the lenses by which we're going to figure out where are we going to scale of the millions of places we can go as we go from 10 to 50, 50 to 100. All right, let's go back to Lauren.
If you talk to ISVs today, they're like, look, I need to innovate or die, right? I'm worried about a lot of these AI first companies coming out and maybe leapfrogging my business. And AI is not cheap. So how do I get some form of ROI? And I think for a lot of the RAG productivity, the ROI is not so obvious there. But I think where it becomes a lot more obvious is like, okay, can I now start to take away tasks that humans were doing? Can I now start to automate more of that? And maybe that is through agents. Maybe that's through Gen AI applications. Maybe that's through reducing hallucinations so that now I can actually build something that is more human-like in nature. That's where we're trying to kind of push the edge of where ISVs are actually innovating.
You led off with biggest customers, but those that were most successful. How did you measure that? Was that their ROI, or how are you thinking about most successful?
Correct. So even like for a lot of those big customers, I'm not going to say who, but I would say a lot of them are like, look, we need to bring down our costs, right? Because this isn't hurdling the metrics that we have internally for this AI product that we're looking to build. Like, help us hurdle these metrics so that we can continue to invest here. And I think that made it very clear that, okay, we need to be more opinionated in terms of where the industry is going. We need to have much more in terms of case studies and art of the possible of concretely where are people improving productivity and efficiency and making money.
I want to transition to some of the unique issues with go-to-market and sales that come up in AI that maybe haven't come up as much in the past. And you've been doing this longer than 0.1% of the sales leaders out there, even though it's so short too. But like one of the ones you're referencing, which is how fast things are changing. And it's like, I'm talking to professors who are teaching AI, and they're literally like, I put together my curriculum for the fall, half of it's irrelevant in the spring, and all of it's irrelevant the next fall. It's like the most frustrating thing. And so you're seeing that as well. As like, how do you mobilize the sales team where it can take 3 or 4 months just to get like a methodology in place and a playbook and all the battle cards in place, and then boom, it all changes? How are you dealing with that?
What do we see in the industry? What is our competition doing? What are our partners doing? What are the new S1 filings say? I mean, there's so many different data points that we're looking at just to make sure that we're keeping abreast of how things are changing. So much of it, quite frankly, is what we learn from our customers, though. how they're building, what models are working for them. Like we see new models come out literally every single day. I know everybody's excited about Orion coming out soon. And, the art of the possible will continue to evolve. I think there's still a lot of excitement in terms of agents. Quite frankly, it's not really there today in practice. It's kind of more in its nascency today. But I think there's a high degree of excitement around that actually being the future of AI.
How about on the hiring side? Is there any attributes or skills or whatever that are, coming up to the top that are unique to AI?
Absolutely. I mean, so for us in particular, like you have to be technical by nature, which not all salespeople are technical. And you've got to actually love the technology. But a lot of it's just curiosity. You have to be someone who's innately curious and really want to understand what are people doing, how is it evolving, and how should we as a company be agile and sort of pivot with the times. A lot of salespeople aren't inherently very agile too. So quite frankly, like the sales playbooks that we're running today, very unlikely those will be the sales playbooks that we're running even 3 to 6 months from now. At the end of the day, we're trying to solve business problems with technology. You have to be able to ask those questions, like what are the problems that you're struggling with? Who do you want to be 6 to 12 months from now? Like how do we help you as a partner get there? And there's ways that we can do that, obviously, with our suite of technology, but also with the partners and the broader ecosystem that we operate within.
I want to push the envelope on like the AI learning curve and the value of experience there and give you a hypothetical where you can hire the top rep from a non-AI company. Let's say Klaviyo just went public versus like you can get someone that's like knows AI really well, but they're like a middle performer. There's a team of like 1,000 people and they're ranked number 500. Who wins?
I'll take the top sales rep every single
So
day.
you'd rather teach them AI than the sales skills.
How ridiculous would it be for me to say otherwise? I have no AI experience coming to Pinecone. You know what I mean? And it is very teachable, just like any technology is very teachable.
Hey folks, just Mark here. Yeah. The number one salesperson. She can teach them AI. She can teach them the tech. She can teach them the industry. She wants to take on that problem more than teaching someone how to sell. And yet when you go out and interview an early stage startup board or a founding team and you ask them, what are you looking for in your sales leader? The first thing they say is experience with our tech and experience in our industry. They want to take a middle performer and try to get them to sell better. But when you talk to experienced folks like Lauren, who's been there, done that, she didn't even blink. She didn't hesitate. She is taking the person with A+ sales skills and she's going to teach them the tech and teach them the industry. And she said she did it herself. Let's get back to her.
For me, it's more about I want to find really, really great, exceptional salespeople who are, hungry, motivated, curious, technical, agile, great relationship managers, solutions oriented, et cetera.
Okay. So like we can put aside, like I'm sure there's 80% of your sales hiring, your interview process is probably similar to past roles. There's just basic sales skills you're looking for. There's some new
Sure.
ones that you're talking about that like you're probably weighing more than the past, like technical skill.
Correct.
The solution selling, we've talked about like system designers to some degree. Can you talk through like how you assess for that?
We have a lot of people who come from other database companies today, right? Who come from other AI, ML, DevOps tools, really infrastructure providers. I think having that experience and foundation is really, really important because you understand the core persona that we're also selling into, which is the developer, right? Is a deeply technical buyer. And that's very different from someone who's been selling into heads of HR or CMOs, et cetera. So I think having experience selling into that customer persona is pretty critical.
You came in and you had to hire next, whatever, 5 or 10 reps in the upcoming month or upcoming quarter, depending on your velocity there. A year and a half later, you're reflecting on some of those reps did really well. Some of those reps didn't. Was there anything that through those reflections that you picked up on a new attribute? They're like, oh, I'm missing this one, or I need to weigh this one heavier?
It's hard because it's hard to interview for this, but coachability.
Hey folks, just Mark here. Coachability, the good old coachability. I don't remember the chapter in Sales Acceleration Formula before Science of Scaling. I don't know. Maybe it was I think it was chapter 2. That was my same thing. Like 18 months into HubSpot. What was the one I was missing? Coachability. It's crazy how it just keeps coming up. It comes up in startups intuitively a lot because if you're at a startup, you're probably selling something that's never been sold before. So we're all learning together, and coachable people learn fast. And so, like, I think Lauren said she's struggling a little bit on it. I just think an important part of the interview assessment is give them feedback, coach them. Have them do a role play and then coach them. I always say I'm giving you one piece of positive feedback and one piece of need for improvement. And then I watch them. Are they listening? They're taking notes? Are they glassy-eyed? And then at some point have them redo it, either in that moment or on the next interview if they're going through. I mean, that is the definition of coachability, is how they receive the coach and how they apply it and whether they stay there. So practice that in the interview. Let's get back to Lauren.
There's a lot of people who come in and they look great. They've got the perfect resume. They've got the perfect experience. They've got the perfect answers to all your questions. But they're kind of set in doing things the way that they've always done them. And they're not necessarily coachable about learning a different way to evolve and adapt. It typically is something that you find out with time.
Thank you for that on the hiring side. How about the sales process side? I mean, I can throw some out there that I keep hearing. Like, you've already talked a little bit about, there's a lot of like innovation teams that are playing around, but it's not getting to the core business. We can't get through legal and IT because they don't have a AI policy yet. Like, what are you all hitting, and how are you adapting the methodology to get through those?
One thing that we spent a lot of calories on was just basically talking to every enterprise under the sun about what they wanted to do in AI. And to be honest, they don't really have large, meaningful workloads, and they don't really have a ton of investment of like what they're trying to go achieve. So it ended up being, sure, like intellectually interesting, but not necessarily meaningful business that we could go close. So I think finding a buyer who is really motivated to run meaningful AI workloads at scale, has the developer resources, has sort of like the knowledge and prowess, like that was pretty hard to find up front, point one. I think point two is nobody wants another data subprocessor today, right? And so finding ways to eliminate that hurdle, because like we are another data subprocessor. And part of that goes through our partnerships and how we've sort of integrated and built into the clouds. I think then like the third piece is sort of data ingestion, right? Like getting data into a database, being able to then like chunk and parse the data and then leverage that data and push it into a lot of other different outlets. Like it's hard. And people don't actually have a lot of that experience. We invested a ton in documentation, best practices. It's a lot of what our DevRel team does today to make sure that we're making it as easy and seamless as possible while we're also building products like Pinecone Assistant, for example, which kind of takes a lot of this heavy lift off of the developer's plate.
I, as an investor in this space, am obsessing over true disruptive use cases versus iterative. I think like this first phase of AI at the application layer has been very iterative. Copilots, looking at the current use case and making it maybe 20% more effective. And
Correct.
The disruptive items like remove 80% of it and really rethink the use case that makes the incumbent technology irrelevant, which can level the playing field between a large incumbent and an attacker. In many cases could give the attacker an edge. And one of the specific hypotheses that I hear as a narrative, I believe, is the switch to unstructured data. And I couldn't think of a better person to ask than you, where there's a hypothesis out there as we're thinking about our visions and our businesses, et cetera, that during the software revolution, the vendors had to structure the data. It was just a limitation of the architecture in most cases. And if you think about a CRM or an HR tech or fintech or whatever, it was like data comes in unstructured. We need to structure it and come up with a structure that is applicable as horizontal as possible, and then hope that that can spit out insights and reports or value that we're trying to create. But with the premise of AI, that's limiting, that you're better off letting the unstructured data go in the AI so the AI can choose how to structure it for this particular business and context and use case, which is a massive architectural shift. Do you buy that that's like an innovator's dilemma and could be an issue for a lot of the current category winners in software?
knowledge is power, and you want to make sure in anything that you're doing with AI, you're taking as much valuable knowledge as possible and you are providing it to that agent or experience. What we're trying to solve there is for every unstructured data set on the planet, we want to have real-time understanding of what is actually going on. And we want to be able to provide knowledge and intelligence into any application out there. The ability to harness that knowledge and data, I think, is at its core what is really needed in AI today. That's what will get us from, let's say, averaging 70% hallucinations up to 90, 95. And I think that's where you'll really see that second wave of AI growth where, yeah, you can replace human beings. And quite frankly, they can be more accurate than humans. And you can build eval frameworks to actually ascertain how much more accurate were we than Lauren versus Mark, et cetera. Like there's a lot that can still happen there. And I think that Pinecone is really at the forefront of that. And it's more about, harnessing the knowledge and leveraging it for a lot of different applications.
What's your advice to folks entering their career in sales now based on those visions?
I mean, honestly, I would say specialize. Like I think about this. I have 2 kids who are very young, right? They're 3 and 5, right? So by the time they enter the workforce, let's call it 20 years from now or so, AI will be everywhere. If you think about like where do you want to encourage them? I think like real core skills, like we'll go back to like having very critical thinking skills. I think creativity is also something that's going to be really hard for AI to completely own. And investing, I think, more in those skills early on, and relationship management, interpersonal skills, storytelling, right? Those are things that like make, I think, human beings very, very special. And I think it will be hard for AI to automate all of that in the future. But like those are the core skill sets at least I would invest in. And then what a salesperson looks like 30 or 20 years from now, who knows? I mean, I think in a lot of ways it will be about relationship management. I think that's kind of impossible for an AI to AI relationship necessarily to occur. I think it's going to be foresight of like where you see industries evolving, use cases evolving, et cetera, and art of the possible. I mean, I guess AI can help with a lot of like what could be teased up as art of the possible, but I still think that there's more to be imagined, more stories to be told. Like that'll principally be what salespeople do in the future.
It really took a sophisticated, experienced seller to mobilize these things we're talking about, of just like helping the early adopter get beyond early adoption to true implementation. So kudos to you on driving that through the go-to-market, and looking forward to seeing your continued success.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lauren. So that's it, folks. Today's episode is written and produced by my favorite producer, Matthew Brown. Editing comes from Patrick Edwards. And hey, if you like the show, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And check out my VC firm, Stage 2 Capital. We are the VC firm that's run and backed by the CROs, CCOs, CMOs, and other go-to-market leaders across all of tech. So that's it for today. I'll see you on the next episode.